Hi, this is Mike. Welcome to Cox Financial Coaching. I was going to not say anything else about velocity banking, but I was watching some videos today on YouTube and I ran across the most recent YouTube by Christy Van of Fantastic Finances. Christy was advising an elderly woman to take out a HELOC and pay off approximately $60,000 mortgage. This lady has the mortgage and has two small credit cards. And as I looked at the presentation, I was really kind of amazed that Christy would recommend this to a lady who could simply pay off her debt with her cash flow, pay it off just as fast or faster with a lot less cost. So Christy is just one of the velocity banking advocates you see on YouTube and other places that are convinced that velocity banking works in every situation when it clearly is not the best solution for some people. As I've said before, velocity banking can work, especially if you're moving higher interest debt to a lower interest method for velocity banking. But I'm going to go through this scenario. I'm going to do it like using Christie's numbers, and then I'm going to show you how I would recommend this particular client, what method I would recommend that they use to pay off debt the fastest way at the least expense. So let's start here with the general information. You see here at the top, this particular individual has $3,940 of income. Their monthly expenses are $2,622. When you take the $3,940 minus the $2,622, they have $1,318 left over for what velocity banking folks call cash flow. Their current debts are a mortgage of $60,880. They have a $900 minimum monthly payment, and although Christy conveniently failed to mention the mortgage rate in her video, it's probably 3.25% or about if the lady's had the house for a while, but let's just err on the side of caution and say it's a 6% mortgage, 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now, Christy and other VV advocates will tell you, that, oh, mortgage interest, if you look on page 3, you see what you paid over 30 years. Well, yes, if you just pay the minimum payment only for 30 years, you're going to pay a lot of interest. But if you have extra money to pay towards the principal, you can pay off the house much quicker. For example, I'm going to buy a house at $193,000, about 7% by the time the smoke clears, and I close on it February 20th. If I pay $500 extra to the principal of that loan, I will pay it off in 15 years and 5 months instead of 30 years. The more payment I make towards the principal, the faster it pays off. Mortgage interest is calculated one way and one way only. The current balance times the interest rate divided by 12. That is the monthly interest charged. You can talk about amortization charts, whatever. The interest is calculated one way. Same thing on a car loan, by the way. Current balance times the interest rate divided by 12. But let's talk about the mortgage. $900 payment, 6%. She has two other small debts. She has a $1,400 credit card. There's a $75 payment monthly minimum on that. And I calculate the interest at 30%. She has another credit card, $1,171. I calculated that interest at 30% as well with a $70 minimum payment. Christy's recommendation for this lady is to get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit on her house at 7.5%. There's a $1,845 loan origination fee, and other fees that this lady has to pay to get this HELOC, along with a $450 appraisal fee on her house. And I put that the low number. The appraisal fee nowadays in my area is about $675. But again, trying to give Velocity Banking the total benefit I possibly could, I put the appraisal fee at only $450. So when you take the fee of $1,845, you take the appraisal fee at $450, and you take the original mortgage balance that you're going to transfer to the HELOC. You're going to transfer the credit cards to the HELOC. This person is going to end up with a HELOC balance of $65,746. So everything's moved over and we're ready to start Velocity Banking. The first month, this person puts in their salary or their income, reduces the HELOC by $3,940. Her monthly expenses are now $1,577 because they were $2,622, but she no longer has the house payment, the credit card payment, or the other credit card payment. So it was $2,622, but her monthly expenses are now only $1,577. The interest I calculated, $386. I calculate the interest by taking the original HELOC balance minus the income before I added any expenses. So the lowest possible dollar amount I calculate interest on for this month was $386. That brings the HELOC balance down to $63,769 at the end of the first month using Velocity Banking. So we're into the second month. Income comes in, reducing the balance by $39.40. Expenses added back in, $1,577. Again, the interest I calculated was the $63,769 minus the $39.40 before expenses are added back in. The interest was $373. That brings the balance at the end of month 2 down to $61,779. So we're rolling along, Velocity Banking, the same thing. $39.40 income reduces the HELOC. $1,577 expenses increases back. And I calculate the interest again on the $61,779 minus $39.40 times the 7.5%, divide by 12 to get the interest of $361. At the end of this 3-month period, the balance on the total HELOC is now $59,777. That is $5,969 less than when we first started, and they paid $1,120 of interest. So that's the HELOC method. Paid off almost $6,000, paid $1,120 in interest. Now then, if this person came to me, I would look at all the methods that I could possibly recommend, and I would do the calculations. I would look at Debt Snowball, which is listing your debts, smallest to largest, and paying all you can towards the smallest debt. When it's gone, you pay everything you can to the second smallest, on up the chain. This person has very little debt. They have a small mortgage. They have 2 small credit cards. So Debt Snowball, what I would recommend is they start with their mortgage balance of $60,880. Their credit card 1 is $1,400. Their credit card 2 is $1,171. If you go all the way back to the top, the money they have left over every month is $1,318. So month 1, I'm going to pay the regular mortgage payment. That's all I'm paying towards the mortgage. I'm paying credit card 1, the minimum payment is $75. And I'm taking my $1,318 plus the $70 I would normally pay on credit card 2, and I'm going to pay that. That completely pays off the $1,171 credit card 2 balance. In addition, it pays $217 towards card 1. The interest I calculated in this method, the highest possible method before any payment was made, before anything was reduced, $63,451. I took the mortgage balance of $60,880 times 6% divided by 12 to get the interest of $317. Card 1 also had some interest on it since it still has a balance. That interest I calculated at 35%, the starting balance, not the ending balance of the credit card. So when I take the starting total debt she had, $63,451, I minus the house payment, I minus the credit card payment, I take my cash flow plus my card 2 that I no longer have payment, I add my interest back, I add interest back for the first card, I'm now at $61,440 after month 1. I continue this process along. In month 2, I make my payment of $900. I pay my $1,388 cash flow. To the credit card, and that leaves me $205 left to apply to the mortgage principal. Total interest, I calculate on the starting mortgage amount number, $301. So that's the end of month 2. My balance total for all my debt is now $59,453. And that month, I take out my house payment of $900. My cash flow is now $1,463. It was $1,388, but I wiped out the other credit card. My cash flow increased by $75. So I now have $1,463 that is going straight towards the mortgage now. My mortgage interest, again, calculated on the balance at the beginning of the month, $297. At the end of month 3, I now owe $57,287 on my debt. So if you go back and look, at the end of month 3, with Velocity Banking, I owed $59,777. So I owe $2,490 less using the Snowball method instead of Velocity Banking. I paid $950 interest, which was $170 less interest than if I had used Velocity Banking. And keep in mind, I use the best possible method for Velocity Banking interest calculations, and I use the worst possible balance for Snowball interest calculation. So I have a question. If this client came to you and you were a nice Christian person just wanting to help people get out of debt, would you recommend they spend $2,295 to just get a HELOC and then spend another $170 in interest than they could have just paid if they had applied their cash flow straight to the debt principal? I'm going to recommend Snowball method in this case. There are instances when Velocity Banking may be the best method. Usually it's moving high interest debt like credit cards and other things to a lower interest line of credit. I personally never recommend anyone get a HELOC. In this case, the lady just moved the mortgage to the HELOC. It didn't really change her risk any. But if you have a bunch of credit card debt that's unsecured, you move it to a HELOC. Now it is secured by your home. If something happens, you have an accident, a serious illness, you lose your job, instead of having unsecured credit card debt that the credit card people, yes, they're probably going to come after you, but it's kind of hard to get blood out of a turnip. If you don't have the cash, you're not going to be able to pay it anyway. But if you move it to a HELOC, guess what? You have the very real potential of losing your house. Not to mention, why would someone pay almost $3,000 for the privilege of getting a HELOC and moving a mortgage over to a higher interest debt? Makes no sense whatsoever. I'm shocked that Christy even put this video out there. It makes no mathematical sense. Matter of fact, I can't think of a single reason this lady would be benefited by using Velocity Banking in this scenario. I was trying to think of any logical reason. You know, some people get so stuck in one method, whether it's Velocity Banking or the debt Snowball or the debt Avalanche, where you pay the highest interest debt first. There is no one best method for every situation, although if a person is serious about getting out of debt, they should probably consider the debt snowball because it's using the money you have by increasing your income, decreasing your expenses, and taking all that money to get serious about getting out of debt. Many people don't have the self-discipline to do that. One of the reasons velocity banking advocates say, oh, well, people don't have the self-discipline to pay that 1388 or whatever it was directly towards the mortgage principal. They're right. Some people don't. That same person is not going to stick to their monthly budget of expenses using a HELOC or a line of credit. And Christy and others mentioned, oh, they're going to go ahead and go vacation and they're going to live like they've been living. Well, guess what? If they continue living like they have been living, they're going to continue to rack up debt. If a person gets on a budget and they spend only what they need to in a month, whatever method they use, they can pay off debt fairly quickly. Some people have a lot more debt than others. It's discouraging. It can be hopeless. But you know what? I put this channel online to help people. I'm a financial coach. I help people with Crossings Church in Oklahoma City. I help teach a finance class there with a couple other ladies. We tell the truth. There is no magical fix to paying off debt. It's math. Do the math yourself. Don't rely on anyone to tell you a certain method is better than another. You can calculate the interest. Mortgage interest, again, is always the current balance times the interest rate divided by 12. Car loan is always the current balance times the interest rate divided by 12. Don't get caught up in the smoke and mirrors or someone trying to show you this magic math that makes everything looks like it disappeared quickly. It doesn't disappear quickly. It is what it is. So in closing, let me say this. There are people out there. They may have good intentions. They may want you to become debt-free. They may believe in what they're doing. But it is just math. 185,000 people currently follow Christy on Fantastic Finances. I don't care if I have a single follower or not. I was $47,000 in debt. God helped me help myself to get myself out of debt. And it was 3 years of budgeting, trying to make as much money as I could, trying to spend as little as I could. And you know what? When I sit down and do my monthly budget now, I have actual money that I can spend. I can save, I can give, I can spend. It's a wonderful feeling being debt-free. So since God helped me, I have decided to put out this channel. And if you want to make a comment, I will not block you. I may not respond, but I tell you one thing, I will not block you. If you have a dissenting opinion, then voice it in the comments. Christy and others, block my comments. They don't want you to know the truth. I don't know what the problem is. It's just math. Why can't people just be financial coaches, look at all the methods, and recommend the best method for that individual situation? You can also contact me at Michael Cox, C-O-X, Michael Cox, Financial Coaching at gmail.com. Thank you for watching this video. I ask you just to keep an open mind. Do the math yourself. We all got into debt for various reasons. Personally, mine was buying stuff I didn't need with money I didn't have. Pure stupidity. And I'll tell you one thing. If you think velocity banking will allow you to go on vacations and spend like you've been spending, and it's a rosy rainbow at the end where you'll be debt-free, that is a lie. If you go on vacation and spend a bunch of money while on velocity banking, you're going to have less money applied to your debt, the same way you would any other way. And one other argument before I go, I almost forgot. That velocity banking advocates will try to tell you, oh, if you spend that $13.88 on your house payment to pay toward the principal, you don't have it anymore. And what are you going to do if you have an emergency? A couple of things I would recommend. First of all, before you start paying off debt, you should save up a small emergency fund. $1,000, 2,000, whatever you feel comfortable. That way, if you have an emergency come up, your hot water tank blows up, you have a flat tire, you can't fix it, it's too close to the sidewall, like the tire repair shop seems to say all the time. Whatever the emergency is, if you have an emergency fund, you can pay that. If you don't have an emergency fund, you can put it on a credit card, or you could get a line of credit and have a zero balance. There's all kinds of options. What are you going to do if you have a line of credit or HELOC? You're just going to roll it into that. It's debt, folks. It doesn't matter what you call it. Line of credit, HELOC, 0% credit card. It's all debt. In this case, the HELOC was 7.5%. Not horrible, but worse than most mortgages. I don't know anybody that has a 7.5% these days, close to it. But you know what? This lady probably has a low 3.5, 4. I calculated it 6%. But can you imagine if it's 3.25? It's even more savings just to pay down the debt by taking your cash flow and applying it to principal. I showed an example in one of my videos early on how it could be beneficial to use velocity banking. I'm not totally opposed to velocity banking. I'm not opposed to any method that helps someone get themselves out of debt. But if you want to do it the fastest and you want to spend the least amount of money to do it, you need to look at all the options. This lady would be best served by using the snowball method. Anyone who would recommend she spend all that money to get a HELOC at 7.5%, that's just not honest advice for this person. I'm sorry. She may have good intentions. It's just not. Thank you again for watching. If I can help you, please let me know.